All right. Here we go. All right. Man, it took a minute. Took a minute, but we on. Yeah, it took a minute, but we are definitely on. Let me see. I got look like all right. There we go. I had to get my mute off. All right, so it's been a minute since we've been on. Man. Looks like it's been like 2 weeks. It's been about 2 weeks since we've been on. And it's not like I haven't been working on any recovery or content. And and I have. So we're gonna jump into this, and I'm gonna tell you what tonight's topic is. And yeah, we're gonna talk about what tonight's topic is. So first, I'd like to say hello to everybody. It is now Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving. It is officially 12:19 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, Indianapolis time, whatever that is. So anyway, I've been working on some topics. So let me slip away and get my notes right quick, because I got a lot of content, man. I have been working on some things, and I was trying to get it perfect. I was trying to get a perfect um, situation going on as far as what I wanted to talk about next uh, in relation to the recovery process. Because, like I said before, I am going somewhere with this, and what I'm doing is um, I'm making an attempt to get all my knowledge out that I have about recovery in order to let something else in. And what this something else is that I'm working on is energy healing. Yeah, and so in order to get to where I need to be, a lot of my experiences in recovery and about the recovery process, I need to get out. So here I am. This is what I'm doing. So anyway, I'm gonna jump into this thing, and let's go. Now tonight's topic is uh, we're gonna be talking about trauma, and hold up, I got another notebook I need to get. Where is that notebook at? Here it is. All right, so I got another notebook because I got like two sets of notes, and I'm gonna start off with my first set. And what I'm going to do is do a slight recap. And on one of my last videos, I talked about trauma, and I talked about how trauma affects the recovery, affects the individual and the recovery process. And I talked about how trauma actually brings a lot of us into the process. Yeah, so how trauma brings a lot of recovering people into the process. And then I talked about the 4 stages of trauma, and which is well, exactly what trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. This is the simplest. The simplest. This is the simplest definition I can come up with. A deeply distressing and disturbing experience, and then you have the 4 or 5 levels of trauma. You have acute trauma, and that's acute trauma is simply a one-time experience of trauma. That's when something very, very simple like a car accident, a natural disaster, um, a sudden loss of life, a violent experience, a rape, domestic violence, or violence in the community. You know, you can have violence in your community, and that can affect the individual. Then the next one is chronic. And chronic trauma results in a repeated or prolonged exposure to a stressful event. In other words, it's prolonged trauma or prolonged acute trauma. That's all it is. It's something that's prolonged, you know. Then the next one is complex trauma. And complex trauma results in multiple forms of trauma, all at one time, though. So let's say a person have a car accident. Then, as a result of the car accident, they see a murder. Then they see the murder. Then they experience a rape. Then after the murder, the car accident, the rape, they bankrupt. All this going on at one time is complex trauma. Then you have what's called secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, which results when a person develops traumatic symptoms, you know, as a result of trauma. In other words, they might avoid people or they might avoid certain situations. This is called vicarious trauma. And then you have post-traumatic stress disorder. And post-traumatic stress disorder, usually from what I've researched, is when a child, for example, experienced trauma in a young age, molested, raped, accident, and it could be acute, chronic, or complex, or secondary. Well, secondary is a development as a result of the first three levels of trauma. So then you have PTSD. Now, why do I bring up trauma? It's like I said before. A lot of times individuals that's in recovery, when they do their inventories, they find out that somewhere along the line, there was some trauma that happened with them. And that trauma resulted in mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional pain. That's what it resulted in. Mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional pain. So that being said, as the individual experienced the pain, what happens is two things start to develop. Remember that vicarious trauma I was talking about, where it says like the individual, they want to avoid people, places, and things. Well, as a result, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, they begin to hurt. And so for some individuals, what can happen is, inside that process, they will medicate themselves. They will self-medicate themselves. And what I mean by self-medicate, that could be anything from alcohol to drugs to promiscuous sexual activity to overeating, gambling. They can also become addicted to drama, and they'll develop obsessive and compulsive behavior. And what is obsessive and compulsive behavior? Obsessive compulsive behavior are the key components which make up addiction. So as a result of the trauma for some people, and this don't have to be for all people, as a result of the trauma, the individual will hurt. And then as they begin to hurt, they will seek self-medication. Now, it's not just this simple. as the trauma hits, the individual's life is in a tailspin, and then they, what I call a darkness set in because of the obsessive and compulsive behavior, which are the key elements of addiction, which at some point results in the active addiction. Now, before the active addiction, there's another type of addiction that sets in on the spiritual level, where the person becomes what? Resentful, angry, and fear. Resentful, angry, fear, anxiety, and depression. These are symptoms of how the addiction affects a person on the what? On the spiritual or the energetic level, also on the emotional level. So, and I can't say which one come first, but however, for me, I'm looking at the, let me bring it down here. I was looking at the vicarious trauma. I began to see that that in my inventory first, where I began to like avoid people after certain traumatic events that I had with people in my life, my caregivers, those who, family members, friends. So I had a lot of post-secondary trauma going on. I mean, secondary trauma, which actually developed into PTSD. So moving on with this, another thing set in. I went through another phase, and that was the denial phase. And inside the denial phase was, now, when I talked about denial, I'm talking about there's basically two types of denial. There's a flat out denial, and denial, let me see what I wrote for that. And let me see if I can bring that one up right quick. Here it is. I wrote denial. On the simple form of denial is just simply stating that nothing was wrong, or I never wanted to admit that like something was wrong. And that's what a lot of people have. They have denial. They're like, oh, everything's all right. Like, you can ask a person, you might say, well, how you doing today? And they'll say, oh, everything's fine. But, they just had a breakup, or they had a fight with their significant other, had a flat tire on the way to work. A lot of traumatizing events, lost their money or left their wallet at home, and then he went in to get some gas or something to eat. They ain't got no money, right? So that's like embarrassment. So anyway, moving on with this, then there's the other form of denial, which I call complex denial. And complex denial is basically made up of what is called plausible reasoning. And plausible reasoning is a slick way of saying lying to yourself. However, it's a system. For example, I remember when I was like doing a lot of drinking, and people would say, "Hey, you drink a lot," and I would say, "Well, no, I don't drink as much as Larry over there. Or I don't drink like Susie over there." So what I'm doing is I'm taking what people are presenting to me, and then I'm disqualifying by comparison. And that's just one part of it. So what I'm saying is, well, I ain't bad as this person. Matter of fact, y'all need to go talk to this person. Or I could say, well, I'm maintaining my job. I got a house. I'm taking care of my responsibilities, but I'm not looking at my quality of life. What I'm doing is I'm putting forward is quote unquote successes, if that make any sense. So this is the complex denial, and it's even more complex than how I'm stating it. But this just to give an example, and if you can identify with it, that's cool. Go ahead and identify with that. So moving on with this denial thing, this is where a lot of people, from my view, get stuck in recovery because, like one piece of literature states says, denial will cause us to so I did something. Denial will cause us to something happen. Okay. So denial would cause us to yeah, I had too many mics turned up. I got it now. So denial will cause you to deny you have a problem. That's what it's supposed to do. So I got some tea. Let me take a swallow. And inside the denial process or the system of denial, what happens also is the individual will actually create a reservation within their own program. So if denial is not dealt with effectively, a reservation will develop. Now, there's one thing I kind of like left out, kind of like purposely. So I'm gonna bring that in, and let's talk about bottom, because how denial is effectively dealt with or looked at is through the hitting of the bottom. That's why hitting bottom for most addicts, and some term it the ass whooping, is very, very, it's a necessity. It's a necessity. I personally feel like if an individual doesn't hit bottom, and let me say this, there's no trap door like in the bottom. And what the bottom basically is that it's a situation where the individual will come to terms with their active addiction as a result, and their addiction period, the obsessive and compulsion, after the primary symptoms are gone, which is the food, the drugs, the sex, the drama, because some of us are addicted to drama, the perception of power, and how the perception of power creeps in is through your what? Is those who sell drugs and alcohol. So anyway, moving on, if the bottom is not hit, then the individual will actually at some point have, like I said, a reservation within their program. And eventually a reservation is going to do what a reservation do. At some point you're going to meet that reservation, and you're going to either use, you're going to go to jail. What is it? Jails, institutions, dereliction, and yes, the individual could die as a result of a reservation or not hitting bottom. And this is the reason why. The bottom is there to bring the individual, like I said, face to face or come to terms with, man, you got a problem. You have a problem, and if you don't deal with this problem unconditionally, then the things that I just talked about is going to materialize, and they normally do. They normally do. They normally materialize. So that being said, the bottom has to be hit. And the person has to feel it in all four areas: mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And when I say mentally, all I'm saying is intellectually. And I don't mean intellect as far as measuring somebody's IQ. I just mean the way you think and your thinking. So the bottom has to turn that thinking around, open you wide up. And then it's emotionally. And inside the emotional part is, when I say emotional, I mean how a person has in how they dedicated themselves to their addiction. The emotional attachment to the addiction, whether it's the physical addiction or the emotional part, where the feelings are involved in. And then there's the spiritual. And what I mean by the spiritual, I mean the energy, how all their energy is, how all the individual's energy is what is directed and put into the addiction. And it's supported by what? The denial. That's what it stands on. And the emotional attachment will cause the individual to rationalize what? The most outrageous nonsense. Even though the reality is staring them in the face, their own reality. And they are surrounded by what? What if and if only. What if and if only. These are the main phrases of the person that's in denial. It's what if only. What if this happened? What if that happened? If this don't happen, it's never anything that's based on anything substantial or substantiated by what? By the facts. Right. So denial as a system and as an outright, and that's something that's outright done, is very, very powerful. And these are what keeps the addict. And when I say the addict, I'm not talking about the alcoholic and the drug user and the sex addict. I'm talking about the person that's obsessed, that demonstrates obsessive and compulsive behavior and whatever it is that's manifesting in their life at that time. That's what I'm talking about. When I talk about the addict. Because remember, addiction affects the individual mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So moving on. I'm trying to find my notes. Oh, here they go. So moving on. I was talking about and I'm gonna go back to my old notes. I'm bumping my head because I'm kind of sleepy. So anyway, I want to talk about resentment, anger, and fear. So inside the denial, what denial will actually host or push in the using addict is their resentment, their anger, and their fear. So resentment being anger, a past anger that the individual is reliving in their mind as if it happened today. And what I mean by past anger, I mean anywhere from 3 months ago and and prior. And anger is, and it don't have to be exactly 3 months, but let's just say around 3 months up until right now, the present. And fear is exactly what it is. It's fear. And it could be fear of anything. Fear of being without. Fear of having. It could be fear of living. It could be fear of dying. But it's basically fear. It could be fear of being wrong. It could be fear of being right. Because fear is fear. That's exactly what it is. And what fear does, it controls it controls the individual. That's what fear does. So talking about this resentment, this anger, and this fear and denial, with those four right there, a person becomes trapped. And they will do anything. And I said anything to maintain their what? Their self-righteousness. Because that's what the disease of addiction, through the obsessiveness and the compulsiveness, what it does is it breeds self-righteousness with the individual. So that's what it does. Now, small recap. We went from trauma to obsessive compulsive behavior, how trauma and the 4 levels of trauma affect the individual or the addict. And then we went from trauma to the resentment, the anger, the fear, and the denial. So, and then we talked about the hidden bottom and how hidden bottom is very, very, very much necessary for the individual to go to the next level or the next phase of recovery. So that being said, and then the hidden of the bottom. So what's the next level or the next phase in recovery after the bottom is hit? And let's say bottom is hit. Let's say the person hits a bottom. And they hit a bottom where they lose their life damn near, because for some addicted people, that's what's gonna happen. They're gonna have to lose their life, their family, their friends, their money, and if they don't lose that, somebody gonna have to come in and take charge of their life, because through their own total self-centeredness, they're gonna believe that they're right about whatever it is that they suffering from their addiction. They're gonna believe that they're right. So they're gonna have to experience something that's gonna change their mind around, change their mind, or at least cause them to look at themselves. So let's say that this happens. Let's say that, okay, the person hit a pretty nasty bottom, and they end up in a treatment center, or they just end up facing the reality that their life is going along. that their life is going not the way they want to. And they start talking about it. So they left from the denial phase to the admitting phase. But here's how that worked, because we understand that denial is forever present. The individual might, for one part, say, okay, I got a problem with gambling. I got a problem with drugs. I got a problem with my promiscuous sexual activity. I'm overeating. I'm 30, 40 pounds overweight. I got diabetes. So they come to a point where they realize that something is wrong. That's the admittance phase. But that don't mean that they're going to do something, that they want to do something about their situation. It don't mean that. That just means that they're coming from denial to admit. And they say, yeah, I got this going on. But they might like what they're doing, or they might be afraid to give up whatever it is that they're doing too. So moving on from the admittance phase, and one thing about the admittance phase, between the denial and the admittance phase, the person could be in and out. They could be in and out. And what I mean when I say in and out, what can happen with them is they can admit it one minute, and then in the next minute rationalize their way out of it. You be like, damn, they just sold your house, homeboy. Bail money. We ain't got no more bail money for you. And your significant other and so forth, they don't want to see you no more. So anyway, moving on. But let's say the individual works past the admittance phase, and then coming from denial to admittance to acceptance, they can accept. They say, yeah, I got this problem with drugs. I got this problem with sex. I got this problem with food. And then they may say, so what? I mean, this is why I'm going to die of something. I might as well die of this, But let's say the person wants to go on to the next level of acceptance, and they want to get better because that bottom had kicked their ass so bad, and they really looking at their situation, their quality of life, where their life is headed, and they'll say, I'm tired of this shit. I don't want to do this no more. I'm tired. I can't do this no more. So I'm going to get me some help. Now, just because they said they're going to get them some help, don't mean that they're going to get them some help. Or they might go look for some help, and then at some point they change their mind. But let's say, give them the benefit of the doubt, that they do the acceptance piece and they go get them some help. This is called the surrender phase. They have actually surrendered once they get the help. Well, let's just say they begun the process of surrender, or they're in another phase 2 of surrender. So what happens is the individual will, until they become active in their own recovery, then it's safe to say that they've surrendered. So from denial is admittance, acceptance, Yeah, it's denial, admittance, acceptance. Then it's um, the recovery part. But I had 5 of them though. Didn't I? Hold on, let me see. Cause I done got sleepy. So anyway, hold on. Let's see. Let's see. So here it is. It is. It's denial. Start there. Then admittance. Then you admit you got the problem. Then acceptance. Then surrender. Then recovery. All right. I woke up just a little bit. So anyway, at the same time, when the person gets to the surrender part and then they start moving in a recovery direction, what happens is now that a person begins to what? Work on their energy. But what has to be done is they got to put their primary symptom or symptoms down. And I would say at about 3 months, at about 3 months, that's when they, of being clean or whatever that is, they could probably start working on the program, working the steps. But you have to stop using your primary substance. Because what you're gonna find out is that was only a small piece of it. That was like about 10%. I give you 20 at the most. You know, it's a big argument on that. So looking at the addict and the alcoholic, looking at them, the addict, looking at the alcoholic, what's and let me say this, right? This is my point of view. My point of view is that everybody is addicted to something. They are. Everybody, and when I say everybody, I'm saying everybody I know. Everybody I know is addicted to something. Whether it's food or sex or drugs or alcohol or drama. I know people got to have some drama in their life. Go to jail for it. So I'm going to say this, I'm going to state this for me, right? Like I talking about, like where I'm going. And, I'm because I got my own addictions, man. You know, demons. And I got some, right? So, however, my goal is to get as much freedom as I can. So, one of the promises is from working the program is freedom is freedom from what? Active addiction. But for me, active addiction is not only the chemical or it's not only the sex or the behavior, but it's also some internal stuff. Character defects and shortcomings that I need to deal with. Yeah. So I'm about to wrap this up because I'm going to come back with it again in a few more days. But I wanted to get a little piece out because, I haven't done anything, and I've been working on this, and I'm still working on it because I ain't putting it out to the best of my ability. So I'm going to get this little piece out and work with it. And what I'm calling this is From Darkness to Light, Volume 2. from darkness, that's the addiction. The trauma, your resentment, your anger, your fear, your denial, to admittance, acceptance, surrender, and recovery. And recovery is on the path of light. Because that's where I'm going, man. But I need to, from my experience in recovery, and I've been in recovery for like 34 years, and I understand that carrying the message is very, very, very important. So that's what I'm doing, carrying the message of recovery. So, that being said, and it's going on 1 o'clock, and I got to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm going to shut this down right now, but I will be back. I had to get back on because I haven't been on. I had got a couple calls asking me where I was at. Like, where you at, SUNI? Where you at? We ain't seen you in a while on your thing, And so I haven't been, Actually, I've been working, and I'm gonna share this. I got my 2 sons. I'm trying to help them. We working on the Eagle Scout project, and man, it is some work. And I'm trying to get them there, man. So anyway, I'd like to thank y'all for listening. We've been on this thing for about 50 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever. And I'm going to end it right here. Yeah, I'm going to end it right here. And hopefully Saturday night, well, I'll be back on by Sunday. I'm going to listen to this, appraise it, and then get it going on again. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening. Hit the little box down there. Pick me up as a subscriber, because I'm going to be on this recovery thing. And like I said, where I'm going with this is, okay, let me back up a little bit. For me, I believe that the 12 steps is a healing modality. It is for me. I understand it. So what I understand about this recovery, yeah, I done switched and came back. But anyway.